Hello and welcome everyone to this week's Shed Adventure. And we have exciting news. A follower, Kevin, has done has found some proper research on dunking. And we think we have the solution. The formal scientific paper that he produced or found comes out that Jaffa cakes are actually the ideal dunker. So, while there might be a debate about is it a cake or is it a biscuit, I'm told it's classed as a biscuit. So, we may have found a solution. Anyway, what are we going to talk about today? Well, what we're going to start, and it's probably going to be a series of videos, is to look at sea kayaking. And eventually I want to show you my sea kayak and we'll go out and actually do some. But before we do that, I think it's important for us all to try and understand a bit of the history and why I still paddle a 40, 50-year-old boat, and why I'm so keen and enthusiastic on these wonderful design icons. You know, I love my design icons, my jerry cans. Well, this sea kayak, this Nordkapp, is absolutely no doubt is a design icon. It is the beginning of modern sea kayaking. So how did we get there? Well, in 1959, a gentleman called Ken Taylor came back from an expedition with a skin-on frame, a genuine Inuit sea kayak, a boat that had been developed by Inuits over hundreds of years, centuries, I would imagine. And he brought it back to the UK, and there was much excitement about this boat, and I believe it's still in a museum, and you can actually see it. And then around 1964, a guy called Duncan Winning, he actually got the boat and did proper line diagram, a line drawing of the boat, and these were passed around to people who were interested. And a gentleman called Jeff Blackford, he had a set of drawings, and he drew them up and he made some modifications to them because a UK guy is a different weight, is a different size, and he wanted the boat that was big enough to use for expeditions. So I think he put about 9 inches on the end, and obviously changed the cockpit, gave it a bit more bulk, a bit more freeboard, so it was a somewhat bigger canoe but more suited to a European. And he produced what is probably the first genuine sea kayak, the Anus Acuta. Anusacuta is how it's written, Anus Acuta. And this caused quite a stir, and you can still buy an Anus Acuta today. That, you know, they're that famous, fantastic for rolling. The original ones were. And from there, they'd been used on expeditions and everything. And around 1972, the guys at Valley, very famous, still making fantastic canoes, Valley canoes, a guy called Frank Goodman, he put this Anus Acuta into production. So this was the first fiberglass production canoe that you know, your average canoeist like myself, very average, could go out and buy. And it is famous amongst the old and bold. People used these on expeditions and came up with ideas about what they could do and what they could update on it. And by 1975, a guy called Colin Mortlock, again a famous mountaineer in that period, he was wanting to go on an expedition around the fjords of Norway, the northern fjords, and go around basically the top of Europe, the northern cape, northernmost part. Hence, the name of the canoe is Nordkapp. And he turned to Valley and turned to Frank, and really, this is where the Nordkapp came from. It was a design specifically for this 1975 expedition, and Frank put in things that had never been seen before. He put in waterproof bulkheads, front and rear, so the canoe was in 3 parts. You sat in the middle compartment, and there was a bulkhead by your feet and the bulkhead behind your back. He put in waterproof hatches in the deck, so you could actually get into these waterproof compartments and fill it with food and fuel. I think it was designed to take about 90 kg, about 90 kilograms of kit on top of the bloke. So you could go away, you could probably stuff, it would be right low in the water, but you could probably get about a 10 days worth of food and fuel in there. So an amazing machine. And he designed it with a bilge pump, so you could, if it took on water or you had to come out of it in the ocean, you could turn it up and you could pump the water out of it. Many things that we now take as just commonplace, these were all cutting edge new developments. And off it went on Colin Mortlock's expedition, and it was a huge success. The expedition was a success and the design was a success. And 40 odd years later, more than that, 1975, it's still in production. You can still go out and buy yourself, I think it's a 40th anniversary version of the Nordkapp. It's an amazing canoe. So what we'll do is, I'll show you a few pictures. We'll look at the history a little bit more, and then we'll go out and we'll look at mine. And then we'll eventually get it on the car and get it out down on the river or an estuary somewhere, and we'll go on a little expedition in this very ancient, but really the godfather of all sea canoes and sea canoeing expeditions, the Nordkapp. And here we have a genuine Nordkapp HM. So it's the second edition, but still a very old lady indeed. Now she's living there looking rather dejected, so we'll have to do some cleaning and put some new elastics on it and some new ropes and bits and bobs. But fundamentally, she's a good girl and she's good to go. But I need to point out a couple of things. The first thing is the length. She is 17 feet long and she's about 22 inches wide. So she's long and therefore fast, but she's tippy. She is known as a bit of a menace to young, inexperienced canoers. So I find her a bit of a handful. And now I need to point out something that wasn't really cutting edge and to a degree has always been a problem for her. So let's look at the back here. So what do we see? Well, it's not what we see, it's what's missing. So what's missing from the Nordkapp is a skeg or a rudder. So if you look at any modern canoe, it will have a skeg, just like you see on a surfing board or a paddle board. Will have that skeg poking out the bottom, normally retractable into a little housing, or indeed hanging off the end, a great big rudder. And the Nordkapp has neither. It just has this thin fin, which is in some respects there built into the canoe to act and do what a skeg or a rudder would do. And what it's trying to do is, when there's a wind on the back quarter, so when it's coming sort of across the back of your shoulder, the canoe doesn't have a tendency to turn up into the wind. And I'm afraid to say that the great Nordkapp is a little bit notorious for having a tendency to turn up into the wind. So this is something that Frank never quite got right, and you have to use your skill and a few techniques we'll talk about to try and keep this in a straight line if she's got a quartering sea or a wind on your stern quarter. She can be a bit of a handful, but generally she is big and fast and will carry 90 kilograms of expedition equipment without a problem. So I quickly flipped her over. She needs a clean, but we can start to see the absolutely beautiful shape, the upswept bow, the famous 7-inch hatches, the sunken cleats for the elastics and the deck lines. That was a new thing, as was the hatch. What they call an ocean cockpit were very concerned in the early days that the spray deck you had, which was basically rubberized nylon, wouldn't really keep out the water, so they produced a very small cockpit, very similar to what the Inuits would use. Today they have what they call keyhole cockpits, which are much bigger, and for me to get in and out of there, it's a real squeeze. And what you can see is I have actually updated that canoe, and I've taken out the plastic seat and I've put in a sponge seat on the bottom and a backrest. So the sponge seat lowers me a couple of inches, which gets the centre of gravity a little bit further down and makes this very tippy canoe a little bit more stable. And then we come down the back, and again you can see the beautiful shape of the boat. And when she's in the water, she is just an absolute picture. An absolute picture. And anyone who knows their canoes will sail past you and go, oh, look at that, that's a Nordkapp, you look very pretty, sir. And you just say thank you very much as you try and keep it upright and not make a fool of yourself. But in a straight line and in heavy seas, that upswept bow has loads of buoyancy in it, and she just really comes into her own. Very lively, and just a beautiful piece of design from 1975. And fundamentally that shape hasn't changed in all the years. They've just put a slightly bigger cockpit on her. So there we go. So we'll give it a clean, we'll get the rest of the equipment out, we'll take you through that, and then for a future video we'll get her on the top of the car. It does look a bit silly because she'll hang out both ends, so we'll stick a red flag on her and a flashing light, and we'll go down to the sea and try her out. And here you see a Nordkapp in the Antarctic, in her element, doing what she does best. Have it, a fairly short and sharp edition this week. Hopefully we'll get all the equipment out. I'll go and find it all and dig it out of various barrels and store cupboards and plastic boxes. We'll get that out. The canoe, as you probably noticed, needs a good wash and a clean up and a scrub, so I'll do that. And we'll get ourselves ready to go and have a proper shed adventure. So I do hope you liked this video. I hope you had a great weekend and enjoyed the coronation, which was quite spectacular. If you do and you have enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. That really helps the channel, and I'll see you next week for another shed adventure. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye now.